What is up, y'all? Welcome back to our Fish the Moment live stream. Tonight, Randy and I are going to be talking about Randy's favorite topic, bass fishing electronics. You guys know Randy is the biggest fan. I'm just kidding. He is not a fan of electronics, but we're going to kind of pick his brain as well as my brain about which type of electronics are best and what style of fishing is best when fishing in shallow water with electronics, or if you should just leave the electronics at home and not use them at all when you're on the lake. So, Randy, how's it going tonight?
Been good, Johnny, man. I can't believe it. We got like an inch of snow here today. 20th of April, inch of snow. It's like I was sitting out watching it out the window today. Couldn't believe it. But yeah, like I said, this is going to be an interesting video. I mean, interesting show tonight. We're talking about this because I remember back, like I said, back in the day back when I first started out, I had one flasher on the front of my boat. I didn't even have a flasher on the console, and I think I caught more fish back then than I did now with all this high tech stuff. So we'll go over that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. We had a challenge the other day. We're not going to spoil it because we have a video coming up here in a couple of days. By the way, can you guys hear us? Someone said no audio in the stream. Let us know in the live chat if you can hear the audio. I think everything is good, but I want to make sure we're good there. But Randy and I did a flipping jig challenge. We said we were going to have to do a swim bait or a floating worm, but because the weather's been so weird and cold here, the fish haven't quite gotten to the position where they're biting that type of stuff here in our region of the country quite yet. So we did a flip and jig challenge instead, and it was really interesting because we're not going to spoil the outcome, but it was closer than you might expect, and Randy caught them old school flipping. I caught them new school flipping. We'll kind of explain a little bit what that means, but I was using my electronics while flipping. Randy was not, and it was a really interesting deal there. So we're going to kind of get into that, talk about that. Before we jump into that, though, one thing I want you guys to know, we are about to hit a very, very important milestone during this live stream. Let me share my screen here with you guys really fast. I just want to show you something that is pretty cool. Hopefully within the next hour and a half, we're going to hit 100,000 subscribers on the Fish the Moment YouTube channel, literally live. We are currently sitting, I'm refreshing my phone here, we are sitting at 99,979 subscribers. We literally need 21 more subscribers to hit 100,000. So if you guys are watching this video and you are not subscribed to the main Fish the Moment channel, go over there and subscribe really quick. We'll get over 100,000 subscribers during the stream. And this is remember, this is the Fish the Moment live YouTube channel. We have this channel, which is our live stream channel. Then we have the main Fish the Moment channel. So if you haven't subscribed for whatever reason and you just got unsubscribed, sometimes YouTube unsubscribes you too, go over to the Fish the Moment channel, make sure you're subscribed, and we will get over 100,000 subscribers during the stream. So that is pretty awesome. So anyways, Randy, well, let's kind of jump into the heart of the topic. So first off, shallow water electronics. When do you use electronics? Do you actually use electronics at all when you're fishing up shallow? Do you even use depth finder? Like what do you use electronics for when you're fishing up shallow?
Well, I mean, there's so many variables. There's so many situations surrounding shallow water, when you're talking about shallow water, it's relative. It's relative to what you consider deep on a particular lake. Like for example, on some lakes where you have a lot of deep suspended fish that use that 60 to 80 feet of water, 10 feet can be considered shallow. And then if you have a lake like some type of a dirty river system, Potomac River, 2 or 3 feet is considered shallow. But here's my foundation, and we'll get into this more tonight in the topic, is when I'm fishing shallow water where I have to really be keyed in on certain specific depth or even shallow breaks, that's when I use electronics. Say, for example, I'm fishing rocky banks, and the key technique to the pattern that I've developed on a rocky bank is I have to have my boat, say, 10 feet off the bank, and the boat needs to be in 7 feet of water, 10 feet off the bank. Obviously, in a situation like that, I'm still fishing shallow water. I'm still fishing the bank, but I've got to have my electronics to keep me in that zone. I can't, because some banks, they flatten out and taper underwater that you can't really see that slope visually from the bank.
Yeah.
In a situation like that, I'll use it. Sometimes if I'm fishing like submergent grass beds where the water is still shallow, but you may have to key in on short growth of grass that's coming up 6 or 8 inches off the bottom. I'll use it. And then other times when I'm fishing visible targets on flat type banks where it's uniform, that's when they go off and I just turn them off. And there's a lot of different other variables we're going to talk about surrounding that, but that's sort of my foundational approach to it.
So it sounds like you're just focused more on the depth, though. So really, you could probably just go with using a flasher, Randy. You wouldn't need like side imaging, down imaging, anything like that.
No, you could seriously give me a 15-foot stick of bamboo where I could just stick it down in the water and I'd probably catch as many fish as I do with my electronics. It might be not quite as efficient, but it would still be serviceable.
That's funny, because that's like, for me, that's something that's really interesting is like, when I used to fish up shallow, I haven't really fished up shallow that much anymore. I was so much more focused on, like you said, the environmental factors. I kind of worry about what the slope of the banks were, the available cover, if I was seeing birds, things like that, water clarity. The actual depth of the water never mattered that much to me, unless you were in a big open flat and you saw a little depression. That was before we got forward-facing sonar, though, and so one thing that I want to kind of share is a small story about what Randy and I did on Lake Stockton the other day. You'll see it in the full Fish the Moment YouTube video here coming up on Friday. We have a very dramatic video coming up with some really cool editing, so definitely check out that video on Friday if you want to see the results of the challenge. But I'm going to kind of give you guys a little sneak peek into what we were doing. So I got some photos pulled up here, Randy, that I'm just going to throw up on the screen, so just kind of give me 1 second here, guys, to get these photos pulled up. There we go. Okay, so here is what Randy was kind of fishing here. This is a very Randy Blockett style situation. Can you kind of explain what you were doing here, Randy, and kind of what you were focusing on?
I can't see what's on the screen. What do you got up
on there? Sorry, you were just flipped. It was the one of the drone shots of you.
Okay. It's up now.
Got it.
Basically, what I was doing in this particular challenge match is I was trying to concentrate on the bushes in the areas I felt the bass were spawning. The water temperatures were upper 50s, which is still a little bit cool for spawning bass, but still, since it's the second week of April, there's going to be some spawners up there. And I did see some beds. So my pattern was to key in on the bushes in the spawning areas, and I was trying to isolate specific bushes that I felt the bass would spawn around. There's certain positional elements involved as far as that make it for a good spawning type bush, and it sort of has to be the right complexity. It can't be too thick, it can't be too sparse. So I was looking for that right combination of the bush positioned within the back of the cove and the bush positioned to where it would make a suitable bed cover for the fish. Because one thing you're going to find out, guys, most of the time, a good fish, like a bass over 3 pounds, they will always spawn around some type of object, whether it be a piece of wood, a bush, a lay down, a dock piling, even a big rock under the water. Very seldom do those good fish spawn just out in the middle of nothing. So I was basically just running spawning pockets in that situation.
Yeah, and it was kind of interesting, Randy, if you could pull up Google Earth and kind of show us some of the pockets you were looking at, because I thought it was fascinating, because I don't fish a lot of shallow water, and it is, it's pretty interesting because, like, I kind of feel like you were running a very specific pattern, and it was not what I would have been doing given the conditions. So if you could kind of pull that up and share your screen there.
Yeah, let me, I'm scrolling over to Stockton right here real quick.
Yeah, and then if you just hit share screen, and just kind of, while we're doing that, kind of give you guys an idea of the conditions. Randy and I, when we got to the lake, surface temperatures were 56 degrees, and they warmed up around 61, 62 degrees as the day went on. Also, the water was about 3 feet high the week before, or like the few days before we fished there, and the water dropped heavily right before we actually got to the lake, so it dropped back down to normal pool. So the water was high, and it was almost perfect for the spawn, but not quite. There were some beds up there, but not a ton. And we also had a cold front, so we were dealing with post-front conditions, cold front conditions, falling water. Not the perfect conditions, honestly, for shallow water flipping, but Randy was able to really dial it in with the stuff he's talking about here.
Yeah. Here's a prime example. This is, on Stockton Lake, it's sort of like a lot of different ones. You got a lot of the flatter coves on these gradual sloping banks. These are all gravel, small rock banks in the back of these cuts here. And of course, this is all flooded buckbrush into here, a few isolated willows and that type of stuff. And specifically, like if you see this right here, see this bush, in the back of the cut here. This is like an isolated buckbrush in the back of this cove, and you probably got like 2.5 feet of water in it. This is the type of stuff I was looking at. These fish are going to spawn around these isolated bushes like this. Also, any type of horizontal wood that you may have like this that is mixed in with the bushes is going to be really key. But for the most part, you're talking about the back 2/3 of these coves on the flatter banks. Now, if we were fishing a lake that had steeper banks, a lot of times those bass are going to spawn on the steeper stuff here. But one thing you're going to find out is on lakes that have fairly flat tapers to them, because out here you're only talking, this is 5 foot deep out here at the most. These fish will tend to congregate towards the back ends around any type of heavier cover, and not so much on the sides there. So on Stockton, it's a pattern lake. Every cove on the lake sort of looks like this. And a lot of times what I found is when you roll back into a spot like this, the fish aren't going to be everywhere. They're going to be, you can roll in here and you can say, yeah, there's going to be one there. There's going to be one on that piece of wood there. There's going to be one on that piece of wood there. And then you just leave. You don't have to fish everything in there, because when you're depending upon the water level, if you're dealing with marginal water level in the bushes like we had when Jonny and I fished there, the water was, it was not any too deep. It was like right on the borderline of actually being too shallow to catch them flipping. And in a situation like that, the premium cover becomes a minimum. Now, if the water was 4 or 5 feet high through here, it would open up a lot of different cover. It would open up some cover back on the secondary row of bushes that would have more water in it. So when you're talking about springtime, during the spawn, shallow water flipping, it's all relative to how much the water is up over the normal level combined with the water clarity. And those are the two most important factors, because water clarity and how much water is in that flooded cover will dictate the position of those fish. It will dictate how they set up within the cover and the techniques, colors, profiles, baits that you need to use.
Yeah, and I know we both figured out when we were out there, if you are, if we were fishing in really clear water, let's say where you had 3+ feet of visibility, it was really tough to get a bite for both of us. And we kind of dialed that in quicker. Randy kind of figured it out a little bit faster than I did. I was floundering around in the clear water for a little bit, but we both dialed in near the end. And it seemed like that 2 to 2.5 foot of visibility, maybe up to 3 foot at the maximum, was what we could get bit in. After it got clearer than that, it was just really tough to get bit, mainly because that water, again, like Randy said, was just barely in the bushes. There wasn't enough water to make them flooded. If it was 2 or 3 feet high into the bushes, you catch them in that clear water. And I went there expecting the water to be higher in the bushes than it was, just given how the lake had been. Would you agree with that, Randy?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, flipping, a lot of people associate, when they think that somebody's like a shallow water power fisherman, they think that, people just do that because that's an easy way to catch them. I'm telling you guys right now, shallow water power fishing, specifically when you're fishing around flooded cover, it's an art form. It's a science. There are so many subtle details that that combine to being successful or not. I could literally sit here and list, 3 dozen different variables that will determine if you can actually get bit or not in this. And for people that have never done it, or a lot of people in the country, they don't know what flooded cover is. Like if you guys live on a natural body of water, you're probably not familiar with fish flipping willows and buckbrush. So it's an entirely different world, and the elements that contribute to being successful like that are hard. It's a hard learned lesson. It's something that comes with a lot of different experience. If you don't go with somebody, it's hard to really know exactly where to put that bait at. Because if you go with, like say, if you went with Jonny or I, we could break down a section of bank and say, here's the low percentage area, here's the high percentage area. And unless you understand what makes an area low percentage or high percentage, it can be very intimidating to fish high flooded conditions in the springtime of the year, because a lot of people just don't know where to begin with. And on top of that, not only do you have to locate where most of those fish are setting up within that cover, but you have to figure out what's going to trigger that strike. And the strike triggers when you're coming with flipping shallow water cover. They have to do with the fall rate. They have to do with profile. They have to do with color. They have to do with the bow positioning, the angle of your cast. It has to, that how the fish are setting in the bush, if they're on the base or if they're suspended in the top of it based upon the different water level. It goes on and on and on. And it comes with lots of years of doing it.
For sure. One thing I know that you mentioned, Randy, and it was kind of the same for me, we could not get bit on lighter jigs throughout the day. And it's pretty funny because we fished a very different way, but we've had the exact same variables line up for us: water clarity, water temperature, part of the creek we were fishing, and also the weight of our jigs. You went from a 3/8 ounce to a ½ ounce. Can you kind of explain that whole process there? That was kind of interesting.
Yeah, a lot of it, when you're dealing with weight size in the springtime of the year, you've got three different variables, in my opinion. You've got the water clarity, you have the depth of the cover, and you have the mood of the fish. And you have to have a foundation to start with a lot of times, because there's no absolutes. But generally, what you have is when those fish get close to spawning, they usually don't want a heavy fallen bait. They want something that's falling fairly slow down there. So initially, I'll start out with a lighter jig sometimes. Like in that, what we were talking about with Jonny, I started out with the 3/8 ounce jig the particular day we were fishing, which, when you're dealing with 2.5 foot of flooded bushes and water visibility of about 2.5 or 3 feet, that's about perfect, as far as when those fish are spawning. But the fish wouldn't touch a 3/8. They would, that for whatever reason, it was too slow of a fall. So I upgraded to a 5/8 ounce, half ounce. What's the half ounce, 5/8 ounce, heavier jig, and it had a considerably faster fall rate. And like the second pitch I made, I caught a good fish on it. And it was that simple of a change, just the fall rate on it. So you got to hit on those combinations. Sometimes it can be the fall rate. Sometimes it can be the difference of the trailer profile. Sometimes they want a frog trailer. Sometimes they want a curly tail trailer. Sometimes they want green pumpkin with a little chartreuse in it. So you just got to keep experimenting if you know the fish are in there. It's like in this situation, we know that the water's 60 degrees. It's April. There's 3 foot of water in the bushes. There's going to be some bass in those bushes. I don't care. There may not be every bass in the lake in there, but there's going to be a percentage of those fish in those bushes. That's just a given. What you have to do is figure out how to catch them. And you'll see on Friday when we put the video out, we sort of explain how we went about, figuring the puzzle out a little bit.
For sure. Yeah, and a couple questions here that were really good. I'm going to share my screen again here, Randy. One question we have from PK is asking, are the bass actually spawning on the hard surface like the wood or the rock, or next to it or around it? It depends on the type of fishery you're on. So, for example, on Stockton, the bottom of the lake has some harder bottom. There's usually some gravel, some sand. And so what'll happen in a lot of these bushes is that the fish won't spawn necessarily in the bush itself. Like, they're not sitting suspended in the center of the bush. Instead, what they're doing is they're setting up kind of in the pockets or the space in between the bushes. But a lot of times you have to actually get back in there. But if there's like a big bush like this and there's an opening that's maybe the size of like a basketball, that's what the fish will be spawning in, is a little opening back in the bushes. So it's like an open space or a canopy in those bushes. That's where they'll lay their eggs, near the base of the bushes. Now, if you're in a lake that has a lot dirtier water, maybe more silted bottoms, no hard bottom, it's just like silt and mud, in that situation, those bass will actually spawn on top of hard objects, like on top of a stump, on top of the roots of a stump, things like that, because there's no hard bottom. They need something hard to spawn around. So in this case, they weren't spawning on or in the bush itself. They're spawning on the ground next to a bush, but still kind of tucked in there. Versus if we were on like a really dirty lake, we might have been catching them off of stumps, and they're actually spawning on the stumps or like inside the stumps. Sometimes it kind of gets crazy. Would you agree with that, Randy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, bass, the whole spawning activity of bass, man, it's like there's no absolutes in it, but what Jonny was explaining is exactly right on there. And for me, like the topic of this of the live stream tonight is, when I'm in a situation like this where I'm not even looking at the depth of the water. I know pretty much what the depth of the water is because it's the same in every pocket you go into, and I can look at a bush and I can see the bottom of the bush. That's when I turn my electronics off. I mean, I turn them all off. There's no need for them. and it makes a big difference. I want to tell you guys a real quick story that give you an example of the stealth on this. It was actually last week. I had to fish the moment on the water lesson at Table Rock, and one of the guys that I took out there that was on the lesson, he was telling me about he won the big bass bash at Lake of the Ozarks. I can't remember, like 10 years ago up there at Lake of the Ozarks. And he said in practice, he went out and he found this one. It was like a giant laydown in the back of this creek. It had a big gnarly root section on it. It was, setting in, I don't know, 5 or 6 feet of water. And he said, he just told himself, and he said he told all of his buddies and everyone, he goes, I'm going to win this tournament off of this log. He goes, this thing is set up absolutely perfect, for a big bass to be caught in there. And so he's telling me this story, and it's like, man, this is just like, it doesn't even seem real. It's like it's so crazy. So anyway, he's telling me about this. He said the day of the tournament he went in there and he never practiced on it. He said he looked at it and practiced, never even made a cast on it, but he knew he was going to win the tournament there. He goes there the first morning of the tournament. He said he rolls up and he gets about 50 yards away from this laydown that's on there, and he had a 17-foot aluminum Ranger with a 75 horse on it. So he turns all of his electronics off. He pulls his trolling motor up and he paddles up to this thing with a paddle. And he's sculling this thing real slow with the paddle. And he said he makes the first pitch in there by this root wad. He said the bait went down like maybe a foot and a half, and his line started swimming out. He set the hook. It was a 613. Swung it over the side of the boat. Won $100,000 in the big bass bash up there on that. So that will give you just I thought that was a great example of stealth. No electronics, no trolling motor, and the fish never see that. Think about that. Think how many times these bass, you roll up to a piece of cover, they hear that trolling motor bzz, bzz, and they hear the pinging off the electronics, and they just shut down. But I may try that. Maybe I'll get rid of my trolling motor, Johnny, and just start paddling around in that shallow water.
Randy's going to have a flasher. He's going to have a paper chart, his color selector off the side of the boat, and a paddle. You're going to have a John boat. Maybe you should take the big engine off too, Randy. You need to kayak fish. That's what we're learning from this. You just need to go kayak fishing, because at that point, then you'll have a level playing field. I think that's the true story there. Oh, man. Well, to kind of contrast Randy's style here, where he's paddling up to logs 50 miles away, I took the very opposite approach on Lake Stockton. I kind of want to show you guys what I did there. It's very different. Similar situation kind of where I was fishing, and I'll kind of walk you through what I figured out. So let me pull up Google Earth here just to kind of show you guys what was happening. So basically, if we pull up Google Earth here, this is Lake Stockton, guys, and Randy, basically, we've launched right here, and as you'll see in the video we post Friday, you can go right or left out of the boat ramp. Randy went left, which is probably the right call given the water visibility. The water visibility kind of down this creek arm was anywhere from about 1.5 to 3.5 feet of visibility, kind of from the bridge down to the back of this creek. I decided to go right and run up the lake into one of these bigger creeks up here. And when I got up here, the water visibility was super clear, 4.5, 5 foot of visibility. And that's just too much for flipping a shallow cover when there's not a lot of water in the bushes. The water was at normal pool. If the water was 2-3 feet high, this might have been a pretty good area to check out. But because that water was clear, I literally dropped the trolling motor, Randy, made 2 casts, and then turned around, ran back down the lake, and ran all the way down to this part of the lake where I started to see some dirtier water. Let's say 2.5 foot of visibility, 3 foot of visibility. And I jumped around a bunch of different pockets, and I was just trying to figure out what was going on. And I hadn't flipped in 3 years, so I had no idea what was going to happen. I didn't know where I should start, what I should do. And so my game plan was to just fish some of these shallower or these shorter pockets like this and check the steeper banks, the flatter banks, just check a little bit of everything. And I finally got back into one of these creeks back in here after about 2.5 hours of fishing. We only had 6 hours in the day, so I was kind of feeling the heat. And what I found was that as I got back into some of these creeks and near the backs of these pockets, if you look at the bank normally, these banks kind of all look uniform. There's some bushes, there's some regular bank, nothing kind of crazy here. However, if you take a look under the water and you take this lake back in time on Google Earth, you can see there's actually some areas where you have some shelf rock, where it goes from being kind of a gradual sloping bank to like these shelves. And what happened is because the water had dropped quickly over the last 2 or 3 days, a lot of these fish pulled out of the shallow bushes that were in the backs of these creeks and moved to these shelves. And these shelves acted almost like an area like this where the water went from 2 foot on top down to 6, 7, 8 feet of water at times. And I figured out that a lot of these fish were positioned on this shelf, right where that drop-off was. And they weren't spawning, they were in the pre-spawn mode, but you could see when I would catch a couple fish that they still had kind of like bloody tails, so they were wanting to spawn, but the falling water and the cold front pushed them a little bit deeper. Now, to give you guys kind of a look at what I was fishing, I have some pretty good graphics here for you, so let me pull this up. So here is an actual recording or an actual image of one of the spots where I caught one of my fish. And if you take a look at this image here, you can see this is the exact spot I actually just showed you guys. It's this ledge, this rock that sticks out. And from the drone, you can see it very clearly. Visually, with your glasses, it was a little bit harder to see, especially, this is a very obvious one. There was ones that were a little bit harder to see that were a little bit deeper. But fish were getting up in these bushes before the front came through and before it got real cold. And what happened is that as the water dropped, they moved to this outside little edge. So what I would do is actually pitch this outside edge right where that ledge dropped down. And I was flipping, but I wasn't flipping the shallow bushes like Randy, and I actually never got bit out of a bush the entire day. I had one fish that chased my bait out of a bush, but that was it. Randy caught every single one of his fish out of a bush. I caught every single one of my fish on one of these rocky ledges here. Now, the problem was with these ledges, it's not easy to find them because they weren't everywhere. And I didn't do any Google map study beforehand to know where they were. If I had, I probably could have potentially found some areas on Google Earth where I could see some of these rocky drop-offs and things like that. But because I came woefully unprepared for the day in that perspective, I had to basically go in and find these spots day of, which was not really a good situation to be in. However, I had a secret weapon that Randy did not have in his boat, which is 360 imaging. So Randy, this is pretty cool. I don't think you've seen this yet. This right here is one of the images from my 360 imaging, which is pretty awesome. And this is that rocky ledge. So right here you can see the ledge sticking out up on the bank where some of those bushes were, and then the drop-off, dropping in deeper water. Now, I could actually look in front of my boat with my 360 imaging and see where these ledges were, and I could just pitch in front of my boat to these areas with the 360 imaging, and every single one of these spots I found, I caught a fish on. It was textbook. I mean, I probably caught 30 fish that day just flipping down these type of areas because those fish had pulled off just a little bit with the cold front, with the colder water, and boom, they were right there. And I have some different...
Jonny, could you explain what that 360 is actually showing there for that scenario? Because I can't even really figure out exactly what you're saying. I'm sure.
Okay.
I mean, of course, I don't know much about this, but I mean, I'm curious if you could explain that a little bit.
Yeah. So right here, this is where the bass boat is. Now, there's an area right here below the boat where actually you have the water column. So there's some water here, but it's real shallow, so it doesn't really show up the water column very well. It's just like right in here. But right here is out in front of the boat, and the range is set to 90 feet. So right out here, it's like 30 feet basically directly in front of your boat. And then this is all the way out to 90 feet in front of the boat. So if we compared it to the image I showed earlier with the with this image, basically what you're dealing with, if you pull these side by side kind of, this little rocky edge right here, it's actually my boat would be in the other way, but right here, that little rocky ledge is that rocky ledge right there. That's the exact same one on this image. And then out here is nothing, out here is nothing, but that rocky ledge is the same as that right there. Does that make sense to you, Randy?
Is the bank off to the right there?
Yeah, the bank is off to the right. So this is nothing, and the bank is off to the right. I'll probably make a video explaining 360 imaging here in the next couple of weeks, like just a 101 guide to it. But this right here is that ledge under the water. Right here, that's the exact same thing.
Right.
So that's where I was finding them. And I could go around the lake, and if you kind of take a look at this, I was finding these little rocky ledges. Sometimes they were further up in front of the boat. Up here, where I was just kind of like finding them on the 360, I took a few images. Here's a situation where there was some standing timber stumps, and then you could see the bank came out here, and it kind of slowly tapered out, and there's a little rock right here that was sticking out. This is the type of stuff I was finding, and I was able to consistently locate it around the lake. So if we kind of go to these coves, it took me a while to find it, Randy, because I was having to run a ton of water to find these areas. But every time I would get into the back of an area where I would find some like ledge rock, like this right here. If we go further back in some of these creeks, where are we? Yeah. You can see right in here, there's some areas where you have some of this kind of like ledge style rock. I caught a really good one off this right here. When the lake is up, you would never see that. Oh, it went the wrong way. The lake is up, you'd never see that rock. But when it was down, there's that ledge rock right there, and that's what I was flipping. I was going through these whole areas just searching that ledge rock, and I caught one every single time you would find it, you would get bit. I just had to run it around the entire lake, and they had to be kind of more towards the back of the pockets. They weren't really up on the mouths, they were more towards the backs. And once I got that dialed in, I was running every single creek, every single pocket. I don't think I actually found any in this one. So a lot of these I didn't find a lot. You kind of had to find steeper banks and steeper cuts, but like whenever I would get back in here and I'd find like a little bit of ledge rock there, trying to find, there was some ledge rock like back in here, just trying to pull up some areas where I found them. And I was just running that around the lake, Randy, and it was kind of a crazy, crazy deal. Here's another place that had some of that rock that was, I don't know. I'll pull up in the video we show on Friday. I'll have all the spots found. I don't remember exactly where everything was just here off the top of my head. But that was kind of the deal. And, what I was doing, again, was using the electronics, using the 360 to flip. And I was basically using it as my eyes. And I could use the polarized sunglasses. I actually had a pair of Randy Blockett's Signature Series polarized sunglasses on. And I could see it sometimes, but like when you had that 2 to 2.5 foot of water visibility, those ledges were in 3 to 3.5 feet, so they were just out of view. So having that 360 allowed me to really dial in my pitches. And I never caught a fish out of a bush, and you caught every fish out of a bush. So it was a pretty crazy deal right there.
So do you think that those fish would have hit something besides a jig the way you're catching them, like a crankbait or something?
Oh, yeah. I feel like if I was cranking like a rock crawler, square bill, I would have caught more fish than I did because we just were doing a flip and jig challenge, and all I was taking the little VersaCraw, the new VersaCraw by Jewel Bait that I helped design, put that in the back of a little 7/16 ounce finesse flipping jig. So I was using a pretty heavy jig. It was a big flipping hook, but it had a finesse skirt on it, and I was just pitching it up there. And I think I could have caught him on a lot of different baits, honestly. Though I do know with the post-front conditions, it probably was a good bait to throw. The jig was a good option, and they were biting it. But I caught like 20, 25 fish, and I probably missed 15 or 20 more fish as well. So that's pretty interesting.
And that's an interesting study when you're talking about, personalities of bass, and not every fish does the same thing. It's like, why are some of those fish hanging out on the outside of the bushes when there's more cover if they would just move up, 3 or 4 or 5 feet into the bushes? Some of them are tied in the bushes. Some of them are out on the rocks. It's, when I see stuff like that, it makes me realize how much that we don't know about bass. We simply do not know everything about bass behavior, what motivates them, their movement. It's so much of it's still a mystery. It's almost like one of the things that I realized that the longer that I bass fish, it's like bass are basically, they're where you find them at, and you can't like overanalyze why they're there or what. They're just where you find them.
Yep.
And it can be there can be no explanation at times for it.
For sure, and that's why I went out, Randy. I was not, I was by no means knowing where the fish were when I went out in the day, and I know you probably had more experience because you fished Stockton your whole life, and, in those conditions. I'd never been to Stockton in the spring ever, so I didn't know what it was doing. So I just basically ran around the lake to try to figure out what water visibility the fish were in, what parts of these pockets they were in, what type of banks I could get on, and I ran a ton of water. Within the first 2 hours, I had fished creeks from here all the way down to here, and all spots everywhere in between. I'd fish the mouths of the pockets, the backs of the pockets. I was bouncing around like a crazy man. And basically, you would go through these areas, and finally, when I got my first bite, that's what clued me in. And I was just searching for one bite. And one thing, I got a question from Steve. Johnny, explain more why you missed some bites while pitching a jig. Some days, guys, on a jig with post-front conditions, I have found there are days where they just don't bite a jig very well. Like, they will eat it, but it's like you'll miss a certain percentage of your fish. Some days they'll just choke the jig and eat it all day long. And then there's other days where you'll get bit all day on the jig and never catch him. That happens offshore a lot with my Fish at the Moment offshore jig. I'll actually go to a Carolina rig or a drop shot or another bait a lot of times when I'm fishing offshore if I get 2 or 3 bites on the jig and they don't eat it. Those fish are catchable. They're just in certain conditions, post-front days, certain days they just don't eat a jig very well. You know, into this day they were biting it so good I was catching them, but I could have probably caught a lot more fish if I had gone like a shaky head or something different, maybe even a crankbait, or if they short struck it I could get a hook in them. So that's kind of what I found. Real quick, guys, couple things. I need to do a little bit of housekeeping here. You guys know how it is. First thing I wanted to share with you guys, let me get this pulled up, is we are currently sitting on the Fish at the Moment YouTube channel at 99,983 subscribers. We are 17 subscribers away from 100,000 subscribers. So if you guys could be awesome and head over to the Fish at the Moment YouTube channel. You're currently on the Fish at the Moment live channel. So go to the actual Fish at the Moment channel and leave a subscription. If 17 of you go do it within the next 30, 40 minutes, we'll hit 100,000 subscribers during this stream. And Randy, I know that you have some beef jerky. We might pick a guy from the audience, someone who's on the stream, to give them some beef jerky. And we also had someone mention that they wanted one of these Fish at the Moment hats. We haven't made any of these just for ourselves, so maybe we'll throw in a Fish at the Moment hat like this, plus some beef jerky, if you guys can get us to 100,000 subscribers during this stream. So we'll pick someone from the stream at random. Let us know.
I'll tell you what we'll do. We will pick one person off the stream here if we hit 100,000, and I'll have Bridgeford Foods send you a case of Sweet Baby Ray beef jerky from somebody that's on the podcast tonight if we get 100,000.
Awesome.
So just make sure, but you're going to have to leave your address with Johnny. So send your address, whoever we pick on there with it.
Yeah, we'll email you. We'll pick someone off the stream and then we'll email you. So don't worry, we'll contact you through YouTube. So don't put your address in the live stream or anything. We'll contact you. We'll get that over to you. So yeah, we got the hat. We got that. We might even throw some Versacross in there. We'll sweeten the package. So definitely go over and subscribe to the Fish at the Moment YouTube channel. We are currently at still 99,984 subscribers. 16 more to go. So let's get that going. Another thing I wanted to call out really quick, guys, is we have some upcoming stuff on fishatthemoment.com. If you head over to our website, fishatthemoment.com, and then go over to our virtual seminars page. I have a couple seminars I'm going to be doing coming up here in the next few weeks. Randy's going to be fishing some tournaments, so I'm going to handle the next couple seminars. First one is going to be my Offshore Summer Secrets Seminar, or Advanced Offshore Fishing for Summer Bass. I'm going to be sharing a ton of techniques that have allowed me to catch bass in the summer in all different situations across the country on man-made lakes. I'm going to be talking about a lot of cool ways to catch suspended bass, inactive bass, how to trigger schools of fish, how to find isolated fish. They're going to be great for tournaments, great for weekend anglers. And because there's so much extra fishing pressure on the lake offshore these days, especially with people learning their electronics and all that stuff, this seminar is going to help differentiate you from all the other offshore anglers and really give you some techniques that you can have to yourself on the lake. This is a very small class, only available to 30 people, so definitely sign up here soon. It's going to fill up fast, and you're going to get a lot of awesome techniques for your summer fishing offshore. It's going to be a great time. And then another seminar I'm going to do is a seminar I did a couple months ago that is in high demand, so people ask for it again, and it's my Seasonal Bass Movement Seminar. In this seminar, I talk about how bass move on man-made lakes with shad and herring, and if you have a lake in your area that is man-made with shad or herring in it, then definitely sign up for the seminar. This is going to be focused on how bass move throughout a lake in every season of the year, how the environmental factors like the wind, the cloud cover, water levels, water temperature, fluctuations in bait fish, forage, all these different things affect how bass move throughout the year. We'll talk about the thermocline, all kinds of things that are critical for bass movement, and you'll be able to track fish in every season of the year and find them very quickly, just like I did in Lake Stockton, like I talked about earlier. I was able to dial in a pattern and find a section of the lake that was working within 2 hours. I'd never been to the lake that time of year. Never really flipped up shallow that time of year in the last 3 years, so I was able to dial it in really quick using the information you're going to get in the Seasonal Bass Movement Seminar. This is by far my favorite seminar to give right here. I feel like is the most valuable seminar for any bass fisherman. If you are ever going to sign up for one of these seminars, definitely sign up for the Seasonal Bass Movement Seminar. You will not regret it. So those are a couple things. And then we also have, obviously, our lake breakdowns available if you guys want to check those out. 40 GPS waypoints on lakes all across the country. You can download those straight to your fish finder, and you get detailed area descriptions. You guys know the deal on these already. We got them for spring, fall, and winter, and then we're going to be working on our summer lake breakdowns here starting very, very soon. So definitely be checking on the website for that. Right now, Randy, we are sitting at 99,990 subscribers. 10 more to go, and we hit 100,000.
That's close.
We're getting close. So that is awesome. So we will kind of wait to see. I'll just keep refreshing it over here. But next thing I want to talk about, guys, a little bit is how to focus on shallow water fishing if you want to use your electronics. Because I know Randy's kind of talked a little bit about, he could basically just get away with a bamboo pole and a paddle and catch fish up shallow. But that's not the way it always goes. And I feel like one of the untapped ways that I catch a ton of fish in shallow water, and this is because I just don't fish offshore that much or up shallow anymore, is I do offshore shallow water fishing. What does that mean? Well, let me kind of give you an example of what I mean by offshore shallow water fishing. It's kind of a weird distinction, but let's say we take the lake over. We're just going to go to one of my home little lakes over here that I've done this on for years, and it has a really good image of the lake drawn down, so that's why I'm going to use it. There's a lot of lakes like this that you can kind of find across the country. This is something you can do on grass lakes as well, but if we take this lake down to a low pool, you'll see on a lot of lakes that you're going to have areas where the water is only 3 or 4 feet deep out in the middle of a flat area like out here. And in this situation, you have a lot of interesting stuff in this pocket. You have, for example, this little drain that runs in. You have some little stumps. These stumps I've caught a ton of fish on over the years. They're in 3 to 4 feet of water. They're not deep, but not a lot of guys fish them because basically you have to know that they're there to be able to catch them. Another thing that would be really good is like back in the back of this pocket. Notice how there's not any rock back in this area really at all, except for maybe right here where you get some of the slate rock. This is a really good deal. You get this isolated rock that sticks out here, or maybe on this flat you get a little bit of isolated chunk rock like right out here. There's even isolated stumps. All this stuff, guys, when we take the lake back up, is in no more than 3 feet of water. It's very, very shallow. So I would consider this, for me, this is as close to shallow water fishing as I normally get. And you may be wondering, how do I find this stuff? Well, other than using Google Earth, which is a great way, you can actually use your fish finder. And I'm going to pull up a couple images here just so you guys can see what I'm talking about, where you can actually find these fish on your electronics with your fish finder. Not only can you find the stumps and things like that, you can actually find the fish themselves. So let me kind of get this set up here really quick. Let me pull this over. Okay, so here is an image from my side imaging, guys. This is side imaging from my Humminbird Helix 9. I'm using Mega Side Imaging for here. Mega Side Imaging is awesome on my Humminbird unit. I love it. It looks great in the shallow water. By far the best side imaging I've ever used. And I did see a question earlier about what frequency to use. I always use Mega Imaging when I have it available, or 455 kilohertz if you don't have Mega Imaging for the frequency. So basically, you can even see right here, this is the actual kilohertz or megahertz I use for the Mega Imaging. So in this image right here, Randy, I'll kind of break it down for you. You got the boat in 6 foot of water. Now to the right here, you have even shallower water. This is like 4 or 5 feet of water. If we zoom into this side imaging image, you can see some really cool stuff. First, you can see some old tires that are in the water here. But you can also see a stump row. All of these are stumps. And there's actually looks like there's a fallen tree right here. This is just a grouping of stumps that's out here in the middle of a bay. It was a flat, shallow bay, 4 or 5 foot of water. And I guarantee you, everyone fishes over the top of these. Literally, their boat is on top of them as they cast up to the bank. And I catch so many fish on stuff like this, Randy. It is absolutely criminal. Like, I should not get away with catching as many fish off of stuff like this as I do. But it's one of those things that a lot of guys just overlook. And one of the coolest things in this image in particular is you have a little stump right here. You have a stump here and a stump here. And if you look at this really carefully, you can actually even see a bass setting up in the shadow of the stump. And if you guys don't know how to find fish on your side imaging, check out my YouTube channel, Fish the Moment, and I have a video about how to find bass on side imaging. It has like 300,000 views. It's a great video, and I explain this concept in great detail. But I can actually find fish in the shadows of stumps in 2 and 3 feet of water, roll over, mark that stump, throw a square bill crankbait, drag a lizard around it, whatever it is, and catch fish. And a lot of times too, like these stumps, even if you don't see fish around them, a lot of times those fish are going to be to the base of the stumps and they won't show up on side imaging. Again, I explained that in my video. Just type in Fish the Moment, bass on side imaging. You'll find a video. I spent like 20 minutes explaining it in detail of how it all works. But basically, this is the type of stuff that is amazing to catch fish on. And really all it is if we take a look at Google Earth, it's the exact same thing you're seeing right here, guys. It's a set of stumps like this in this shallow pocket. You could find a set of stumps over here like this. You could find a set of stumps over here. It all looks the same, guys. That's basically this right here. This set of stumps right there is the exact same thing you're looking at when I pull up this image right here. That's what you're looking at. And guys just overlook this because, again, they're going to be putting their boat on top of this as they're fishing down the bank. They're actually going to go over it. And Randy, I'm sure you probably drive over the top of this stuff as well. Have you ever kind of tried to target the stuff 3, 4, 5 foot of water with those stumps like that?
Yeah, definitely not with the side imaging with that clarity. I mean, that's one of the things that I would suggest everybody go see your side imaging video you have. Is I can't get my side imaging to look that clear. I mean, and if I did, I would have to have my reading glasses on to see what you're talking about as fish. So in my situation, I'm relying more just on random fan casting. One of the advantages that you have, being able to be this specific is your percentage, your casting has a lot more high percentage hookups than mine would. I'm just going to have to fan cast randomly over, and I may pick up fish that you're not seeing on there. I'm not sure. But the efficiency for fishing specifically shallow water flats in less than 5 foot of water like that, no question about it, side imaging would be a huge tool to master that. I'll give you that for sure.
Yeah, and you can also find the stuff, same thing, guys, on 360 imaging. So I kind of had some stuff pulled up earlier where you can find a lot of the stuff on 360 that is awesome. You can also use like the live scope perspective mode. I know guys have been really big on that. I'm going to test it out more. I've been trying to focus on one piece of technology at a time and learning it. That's kind of how I go about things. I like to learn like 360 really well before I move on to something else. I have perspective mode mount on my live scope, so I'm going to be experimenting with that once I get my 360 skills kind of dialed in. Again, if you try to learn 6 technologies at once, you're not going to master any of them. So I'm going to kind of focus on that here in a bit. But what I like about the 360 is I can actually spot lock, or you could actually put your power poles down and just kind of let that thing go in a circle. Now, spot locking in 3 or 4 foot of water, maybe not the best idea because it's going to make a lot of noise. Maybe power poles would be better if you're trying to do the shallow water electronics deal. But I know that perspective mode that kind of goes flat across the bottom, Randy, is a really cool deal. And I'm going to test out that as well, see what the difference is, what the capabilities are. I probably should have already tested it, but I just kind of, I like to, like I said, I like to be very thorough with my analysis and all that stuff before I start sharing stuff. I hate to give bad information. That's one thing I know. A lot of the guys will get the perspective mode, they'll fish with it twice, and they'll be like, boom, video, here we go. But I've had my 360 imaging, Randy, for like 8 months now, and I've still not made a video about it because I have not feel like I've dialed in. I feel like I just am now dialing it in perfectly where I can make a video on it. But these technologies do take a long time to master, even for someone like myself who spends their whole time just dealing with electronics.
Yeah, I think, and even as much experience as I have in bass fishing, when I look at that image of the 360 or even a lot of the side imaging, I'm not really sure what I'm looking at. I mean, I can look at it and I can guess what it may be, but the difference between like somebody like yourself that is highly skilled with this technology and the average angler is I think people just don't know what they're looking at. A combination of they don't know what they're looking at, and they don't know how to properly adjust their settings to get that picture.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, it's something that it just takes a lot of time to learn.
It does. It's just time on the water. I've talked about that in some of my recent videos on Fish the Moment, guys. If you want more info on electronics, go to the Fish the Moment YouTube channel and subscribe. We were currently at 99,992 subscribers, guys. 8 more people. If we can subscribe, 8 more people. We have like 20 minutes left on the stream. If you guys can get us to 100,000 subscribers during the stream, a case of beef jerky is coming to one of you, plus a Fish the Moment hat. I think that's a pretty good deal. It's free to subscribe. So go over to the Fish the Moment YouTube channel, the main Fish the Moment channel. This is the Fish the Moment live channel. So we are currently at 90. Yeah, I'm looking at right now 99,992 subscribers. Not at 100K yet. So definitely go check that out. And again, if you want electronics videos, check out the channel there. While you're subscribed, you might as well check out the videos. Now, Randy. One thing we talked about, you go back and forth on the live scope, on getting 360, on all these different technologies. If I taught you how to use 360 imaging, is that one step too far? Would you be willing to put a 360 imaging on your boat and try to learn it like I was doing with the rocky ledges and stuff like that? Could I convince you after watching that presentation of how I caught him at Stockton? Like, is that interesting to you at all?
I can't do it. I just, like I said, this has been an internal battle inside my being that I've fought for the last year or so on LiveScope. And, I vacillated back and forth. At one point, you got me talked into doing it until I just realized, and I got so much support from, like the subscribers on my own YouTube channel about don't do it, Randy, don't go to the dark side and all this type of stuff. And I finally just had to dig my heels in. I'm just not going to do it. I'm just going to. I appreciate that technology. I know how effective it is. Don't get me wrong, but it's like for me, I feel like the niche that I have, if I master shallow water fishing the way that I like to do it, I think that can give me an advantage over a lot of times over the live scoper, simply because that water is getting ignored so much. So it's hard to do everything. It's like if in a perfect world, the ultimate bass angler would be the one that could adapt from the live scope technology to using a paddle instantly. When they looked at the situation, they would know exactly what to do, and they wouldn't have any biases. They'd have no prejudices over what techniques they want to fish. They would adapt immediately. But nobody has emerged that hasn't been able to do that yet. So to answer your question, no, I think I'm gonna pass on the live scope. I'll listen to you talk about it, and I'll be very impressed with what you're doing with it. But I'll stick with my bamboo 10 by 12-foot bamboo pole.
Oh man, well
I'm seriously thinking about getting on eBay and trying to find me 2 old Humminbird flashers and putting the compass on my boat and just saying, man, I'm going all the way back to old school. I'm gonna bring it back, and we're gonna have a sort of a rebirth of old school.
Oh man, that would be interesting. That would be something. I think that would be. I don't know. That would be interesting. If anything, it'll make our challenge videos very, very fun. But the thing that I couldn't live without with that is I couldn't live without my mapping. Like, if I didn't have my contour map, I feel like, honestly, Randy, if you had to take away from me side imaging or all my electronics or my contour mapping, Navionics mapping or Lake Master or whatever, I would give up my electronics and keep my Lake Master mapping. That's how important my Lake Master mapping is to me. I couldn't give that up. I don't know about anyone else, but for me, that's it's crazy important.
I got a story for you. Let me tell you an old school story here, guys. This will tell you way back.
By the way, we're here, Randy. We are currently at 99,999 subscribers. We are one subscriber away. Come on, guys. So create a Google account. You can create 2 Google accounts and subscribe twice, guys. That is okay for the cause.
Okay, we're probably going to hit it as I'm telling the story, but back in the early 90s, some of you guys out there know who Danny Cree is. He got second place in the 1986 Classic. Danny's one of my best friends of all time. We roomed together forever. We were fishing a tournament out of the St. Lawrence River in New York back in the late 1980s. So anyway, this was back when we had a compass. No, there was flash. We had a flasher and a compass, and we wanted to go out to this area called the Duck Islands. And the Duck Islands, once you got out of the mouth of the St. Lawrence River into Lake Ontario, you had to run across the lake where you couldn't see shore anywhere. So we spent the night learning how to triangulate with our paper maps and our compasses, and we ran out to the Duck Islands in the middle of the unknown with a Humminbird Super 60 and a compass on our boat with a map on our lap, made it to the Duck Islands and back, and that is old school. So
That is awesome.
I miss those days.
By the way, Randy, we just hit it. I'll put it up on the screen. 100,000
All right,
subscribers. Thank you. 100,000. We started the channel August 15th, 2016.
Wow.
10 million views later. We got it going. 100,000 subscribers. Guys, we did it. Thank you so much for the support over the last... It's been 4.5 years. A lot of grinding, a lot of hours on the computer, fishing, stuff like that. Just for a guy who's not a professional fisherman, just kind of loves to do it. It's pretty awesome. Very humbled, very, very blessed to have that. So thank you guys for the support. It's been awesome.
Yeah, that is an awesome deal. And like I said, if the Googans can get 2 million subscribers, Fish the Moment deserves 5 million with all the information you put out, Johnny.
For sure. PK says his daughter was 100,000. That's pretty awesome. Hey, you put that on the resume right there. No, just kidding, but that's awesome. Good job, Randy. Good job, my team. I know they're watching out there too. Couldn't do this without my wife, without my support from family, my mom. So big moment, and it's shared with the whole family. There's a lot that goes into a YouTube channel. You guys think it's just YouTube, that's it. But we spend hours and hours. My wife helps me with the YouTube channel, my mom, Randy, obviously. And we spend hours and hours and hours. Between all of us, we're spending hundreds of hours a week just on YouTube, just on creating content, trying to put out the most helpful, the most beneficial, the highest quality content we can for you guys. So definitely a lot of sacrifice, but it's definitely worth it, and it's all thanks to you guys. So really appreciate all the support there. Now, one question for you, Randy. Because we're hitting 100,000 subscribers, one thing I wanted to do, and I don't know if you guys would be interested in this, and I can definitely do it if you guys are interested, is I was thinking about doing like a video on my journey thus far, of kind of how I started. I know, for some of you guys to know, Randy and I, we met when I was 8 years old, I think at the Bassmaster Classic or somewhere, Randy. We met at some event, and I've been going to Bassmaster Classic since I was 8. I used to do seminars on the old hog tanks, those big trailers filled with water. I was up in front of 500 to 1,000 people, and I would do that for like 3 hours a day for all the conventions all across the country till I was like, 18 years old. And, I kind of have a pretty interesting story how I made it to get my MBA, didn't go professional fishing route. If you guys are interested in that story, I could make a YouTube video about it with I have old recording footage of old grainy cassette tape footage of me on the hog tanks, me with all the pros, all that stuff with the fishing with the pros. From when I was younger. So if you guys are interested in a video like that, I can make that. So let me know if that'd be interesting. Would you be interested in that, Randy?
I would love to see that. That to me would be that thing would go viral in my opinion. That would be a great story. Sure.
Oh man, get a little old Johnny. Let me try to see. I might be able to find an old picture of me.
I don't think you guys realize when I first met Johnny when he was 8 or 9 years old. He knew more about bass fishing than most pros out there. I mean, he could walk up to Rick Clunn and hold his own at 8 or 9 years old with the most detailed, advanced, in-depth, complicated fishing conversation. So it's sort of a phenom, really.
Okay, so we're just gonna pull some stuff up here, Randy. Just kind of go in the memory bank here. I don't know what images are gonna show up here, but that's little Johnny right there. Sponsored up. I mean, look at all that stitching. That was old patches. I was actually the first kid to actually get a jersey. Earl Bentz from Triton Boats gave me a jersey when I was 8 years old. Got old, very young Johnny. This is some images of me up on the tank, the hog tank, repping sponsors. I mean, look at that hairdo, Randy. That is aggressive right there.
I can't see it. It hadn't popped up on the.
Oh, gotcha.
The delayed a little bit, I think.
Yeah, there's some classic. Oh man, we got very, very young Johnny here with Stacy Twiggs. You remember Stacy Twiggs, Randy, from Bass?
Yep.
On the stage, there's 8-year-old Johnny in the
All
Superdome
right.
with a check. Man,
Yep.
there's some gems back in the day. I mean, I was even on the cover of a video game, Randy, with Jay Yellis and Luke Clausen on the cover of a fishing video game back in the day. So there's some crazy stuff some funny stories. There's some stuff we can kind of share that if you guys are interested. I've never talked about it on the YouTube channel because I always just worry about, people don't care about what I've done. They want to know how to catch fish. So I've never talked about it, but that is I have some crazy stories from back in the day. Randy, you know a lot of it, but I don't think really other than like my mom and like a very few group of people actually know anything about it. My wife probably doesn't even know 10 times this or any of the stuff that I used to do when I was really young. So it's kind of fun. But anyways, so we're going to be picking someone. I'll have someone from my team right now pick someone off the stream, and then we'll message you for sure to send you out that case of beef jerky from Bridgeford, and then we'll send you guys a Fish the Moment hat like this. So we'll get that one over to you. Awesome. So, Randy, let's just kind of close it up a little bit over the topic. We kind of got distracted there, but on the shallow versus offshore fishing, what do you kind of think in terms of your overall perspective? Like, do you need electronics? Do you not need electronics for shallow water fishing? If you were just going to say to recommend someone, if they want to become an expert at shallow water fishing, should they invest in electronics or should they just focus on perfecting the craft?
If you want to just focus on shallow water angling and you don't have an interest in fishing offshore, the only thing that you really need is 2D sonar, in my opinion. I mean, you can cover almost every situation with 2D sonar you could probably want. The only thing that you're going to miss out on is like when Johnny was talking about when you're using the 360 or side imaging on shallow flats with a cover on it. But there are very few situations that is necessary. 90% of the shallow water fishing takes place under your boat or on the bank or within 10 feet of the bank for the most part of the time. So you could spend $500, get a 2D, some 2D sonar and maybe some little inexpensive mapping system and do just as good. The thing that you don't want to have to work on, in my opinion, is work on your boat positioning, your casting angles, your stealth presentations, and become a master at running that trolling motor. Guys, I'm telling you right now, that one of the biggest overlooked things to being a really artist in shallow water is being a master at running a trolling motor. When I'm talking about that, I'm talking about understanding the momentum that your boat has against the wind or whatever as you're coming up on a piece of cover. And that's probably the most non-talked about thing in shallow water fishing, and in my opinion it's the most important. It's the thing that separates the guys like John Cox versus the weekend dude that fishes shallow water. So stay with the 2D sonar, spend your time focusing on how fish position in shallow water cover, casting angles, and you can compete at the highest level with just that.
For sure. Yeah, and I mean, if you guys are going to invest in some sort of electronics for shallow water and you do want to go that route, the 360 imaging is great. Before you invest in 360 imaging for shallow water fishing, I love 360 imaging, especially for offshore fishing. I am going to be doing a review of perspective mode versus 360. So unless you really want to go out and buy a 360 right this minute, go for it. But I'm going to do a very detailed comparison on the main Fish the Moment channel of the perspective mode, both from the Lowrance, the hopefully when Humminbird Mega imaging comes out, whenever that comes out, and then the Garmin. I'll compare those perspective modes, and then in addition I'll compare the 360 to that, and I think that'll give you guys a good idea of what electronics are best if you're going to invest. If anything, wait for that recommendation. If not, 360 obviously works great. I talked about it during the stream of how it helped me catch a bunch of fish. One question guys had was, where'd the mustache go? I don't need it anymore. The flipping challenge is over. That could mean one of two things. Either I retired it because, I'll only pull it out when I need it for the win, or Randy forced me to retire it because he put me away and beat me. So you'll have to check out the video on Friday, whether it's retired or it's in the vault waiting to be pulled back for a next shallow challenge, or if Randy forced me to take it away because I don't know. We'll see. It's gonna be Friday's video on the Fish the Moment channel. Real quick, guys. Again, if you guys are liking the content we have here and you want to support the channel, one of the best ways to do it is head over to our website, fishthemoment.com. We don't have any sponsors that support like the podcast or really any of our videos or anything like that, other than like Jewel. Randy's sponsored by Megabass Bridgeford to help kind of keep us going. But the best way and the biggest way we support our channel is through our website, fishthemoment.com. And one of the best ways you guys can help support is actually signing up for one of our virtual seminars. A couple we have coming up, or one is the Offshore Summer Secrets Seminar I'm going to be talking about, or we'll be having here in a couple weeks. It'll be next week. And this is advanced offshore fishing for summer bass on man-made lakes. I'll be talking about how to target really hard to catch bass in schools that are suspended, fish that are in isolated cover offshore that a lot of guys overlook. Because of all the increased pressure on the lakes over the last few years, offshore fishing is getting harder and harder. And in this video, or in this seminar, I'm going to talk about all of my techniques to consistently catch fish, even if there's guys covering up all the community holes. When I go to the lake, I have to catch fish for videos. There's no way around it. If I don't catch fish, I'm not making money. So I have to dial it in and find unique ways to avoid fishing pressure, avoid other boats. And that's what I've developed over the last basically 5 to 10 years, is how to beat the fishing pressure and catch a ton of big fish with unique baits, unique retrieves, things like that. So definitely check out the seminar if you're interested. And I also have my seasonal bass movement seminar that we'll be talking about how to follow bass throughout all of the year. Spawn, pre-spawn, post-spawn, fall, summer, all the transitions, what causes those fish to move from the environmental factors, water temperature, water clarity, thermocline, all those things. It'll help you follow and find bass around your lake year-round and get on bass a lot faster to keep you catching more fish quicker. And it's definitely a can't-miss seminar. It's my favorite seminar to give, so definitely check out the seminar. It's backed by heavy demand. So that is that, Randy. And again, thank you guys so much for the hitting 100,000 subscribers. We could not do what we're doing without you. I am just super grateful, super blessed to be able to have such a great community, Randy and I both, and you guys are just amazing. The way you support on Patreon, on the website, we could not be doing this without you. And we are going to make sure that we continue to put high-quality content out that is never going to cheat you guys. We'll have, really good, high-quality free content. That's what we like to do. And then, obviously there's ways you can support on fishthemoment.com, but at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. We want to share as much information with you guys as we possibly can so that everyone can enjoy fishing and become better bass fishermen and, do it the best way we can. So, Randy, anything else to add there?
Yeah, again, congratulations, Jonny, 100,000. It's unbelievable. And just appreciate everybody that's tuning in. We had a really good turnout tonight for the podcast. Like I said, Fish the Moment Live, this is the largest live podcast for fishing in the country, bigger than all the other top guns out there. And it's because of you guys tuning in, man. We don't take it for granted. We look forward to it every week. We appreciate it. And like I said, none of it's taken for granted that you guys are taking an hour and a half out of your evening to join us here. So thanks again. Appreciate it.
For sure. Thanks, guys, again for all the support. We'll be back again next Tuesday, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time with another live stream. And check out the challenge video between Randy and myself this Friday on the Fish the Moment YouTube channel. We'll be doing that shallow water flipping challenge that we talked about in the stream tonight. So thanks again for checking out the video. We'll see y'all next video.